For those who are eligible and registered, casting a vote on Election Day is an important civic duty. And just as important is the work of the Johnson County Election Office, who runs our county's elections. While they have expert and dedicated staff in that office, they can't do it alone. On this episode, hear from Election Commissioner Fred Sherman, who will walk us through this year's election cycle and everything you need to know about being an election worker, including why the public's role is so crucial. You will also hear from an election worker and get her take on why she contributes her time and talents to help ensure successful elections in our county.
Whether you live in or just love Johnson County, Kansas, JoCo on the Go has everything Johnson County. Here's what's happening and what's coming up in the community you call home.
Thanks for joining us on JoCo on the Go. I'm your host, Jody Hanson, a Johnson County resident and employee of Johnson County government. We have two countywide elections on the calendar for 2022, a primary election in August and a general election in November. Those may seem far away, but the election office is already hard at work planning those elections and recruiting residents to help ensure our elections take place securely and successfully. Election workers are so important for this process. Joining us today are Election Commissioner Fred Sherman and Susie Martin, a Roland Park resident who not only serves as an election worker, but helps train other election workers. Thank you both for being here today.
Hello there. Thanks for having us today. I look forward to this conversation.
Glad to be here.
Fred, let's start with you. We know 2022 isn't a presidential election year, but we still will have some important races. So if you could please talk to us about the year's election calendar, what types of races we can expect on the ballot, and then maybe the timing of when people need to be registered in order to vote in those elections.
Okay, great question. And actually, this is going to be a pretty active year from an election standpoint, even though it isn't a presidential year. It's an even number year, so it is one of our bigger election cycle years. This is going to be the year where we do a lot of statewide races in terms of the governor's race, attorney general, secretary of state, those statewide races. Obviously, congressional rep is up for voting every 2 years, so that will be another race that we have on the ballot. And then also the Kansas House races will also be on the ballot. So those are kind of the primary statewide main races that for consideration in 2022. We also will have some local Johnson County races. The county chairman position is also up for re-election this year. And then we have three wards or districts of the Johnson County Board of County Commissioners that's going to be up for election this year. So a number of pretty important races on the ballot. Currently, there also is one constitutional amendment that's been passed and will be on the August primary ballot on August 2nd. As we record this podcast, I'll say that the Kansas legislation is also in the midst of working a number of bills, and some of those bills also proposes some additional questions or constitutional amendments. So as the Kansas legislative process plays out in the coming weeks or months ahead, there could be some additional items either on the August ballot and or the November ballot. So that's kind of the broad overview of elections in terms of what's to be considered. There also could be some additional measures on it if any of the cities or school districts or any other jurisdictions wants to put a question or measure on the ballot. So stay tuned. There's still more to come from that standpoint. In terms of calendars and deadlines, there are a number of deadlines. Probably the key one for this year is going to be June 1st. And that June 1st is a pretty important date, maybe not necessarily from the voters, but from a number of standpoints. June 1st is the filing deadline. So all the candidates have until June 1st to file. That's also the deadline for any candidates who've already filed to withdraw from the ballot. So even though currently we have, for example, the chairman race for the county commission race, we currently have 4 candidates, so that will trigger a primary race in August. There could be some additional candidates that file for that or other races, or there could be candidates that withdraw that's already filed from that standpoint. One of the other interesting components here this year is this is a redistricting year. So every 10 years with the census numbers that come out, and they were released this last year. So Kansas, the state legislation is going through a process of redistricting the state for both congressional representative districts, as well as state, House, and Senate districts. So some of the Kansas House members may not know which race they're going to be in until that redistricting process is concluded. And again, we hope that that's concluded well before the June 1st deadline. So that June 1st deadline is also very important for voters because it's also the date that if you want to change your party affiliation, you can do so by June 1st. And to do so, you need to re-register to vote to affiliate with a party. So basically, every 2 years, this August primary is the only time that a voter really has to declare, and we really have an interest in terms of their party affiliation, because this August ballot is really the nominating process for the two major parties here in Kansas. There are three recognized political parties here in Kansas: the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and the Libertarian Party. The Libertarian Party is a minor party, so they go through a different process for nominating their candidates. But the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, the August primary is their nominating elections. So in essence, we're going to be conducting almost three separate elections for that August primary. We're doing one for the Republican Party, one for the Democratic Party, and then also any kind of at-large measures at it. So if you are currently registered as either Libertarian Party or with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, and you want to vote on a different party's ballot, you have until June 1st to re-register to affiliate with that party. It gets very confusing from this standpoint, but again, that June 1st deadline is the key important deadline if you want to do it. We also have about unaffiliated voters, and those are voters who have not affiliated with a political party. You do not have to affiliate with a party. Every voter in Johnson County will receive a ballot on the August measure. And for example, the county commission races, as well as any of the constitutional amendment questions, any voter will vote on that. But typically the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, you need to affiliate with their parties to vote on their ballot measures. And any unaffiliated voter can change or affiliate with a party up to and including on election day. So if you're currently an unaffiliated voter, you're fine. You do not have a June 1st deadline. But if you are currently affiliated with a party, one of the three parties, and you want to change that party affiliation, June 1st is the deadline to do so. So a lot of information there. But again, that June 1st is the first important deadline for voters if they want to change their party affiliation.
That's a good date to keep in mind. A lot of good information there. So let's talk about kind of the back end on what happens to make these races go as smoothly as they go. I know a big part of that is election workers. So if you can talk about the need for election workers this year, Fred, how many do you need? Maybe how many do you have? And what kind of jobs will they perform?
So actually creating and implementing an election is a multifaceted operation where a lot of things happen concurrently, all coming to the head coming up to election days, both in August and November. And, we have some full-time staff, but not enough staff to basically be able to implement all the different facets in terms of what needs to be done. So we'll need between probably 1,000 to 2,000 election workers in various capacities to help us out, ramp up, and then actually do the operations of servicing voters, actually providing the opportunities for voters to do so. And that's a wide range of operations, from basically working at a polling site on election day, or we're going to have a number of advanced voting sites this year. And again, we'll need a good crew of election workers to help service the voters on that aspect of them. In Kansas, we also have vote by mail. So we have a work crew and a special board that kind of helps us through the mailing process for that. We also have a lot of other needs in terms of training, logistics in terms of setting up the election equipment, delivering the equipment. So a wide range of that aspect, as well as just part-time seasonal folks that help us with the voter registration process as well. So a broad range of aspects in terms of what all we can do in terms of having election workers. So it's not just election day. We have a need, particularly will be June and July as we ramp up for the August election. And then probably in late September and October is the next time frame where we'll need a good grouping of health election workers to help us out.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Susie, you're here as an election worker. So I'd love to hear more about you and your story. What's it like to be an election worker? How did you get started? And how long have you done it?
Well, thank you. I have been an election worker since the general election in 2016. And I came on board at the request of a one of the trainers for election workers to assist her in training election workers for that presidential election. And since that time, I've been hooked. I love working as an election worker. I've participated not only as an election worker, working small elections, but the presidential elections. To me, no election is small. They're also very important. I enjoy being able to know the process of how votes work from the point of view of the voter. I've been able to be an assistant supervising judge, which just has a little bit more responsibility. And I've most recently acted as a supervising judge, which allows me not only to guide the team that I'm working with and pull them together as a group, but then also to assist the voter in understanding the process. I get very excited about voting, and I believe I'm a voting geek. And no two elections are alike. I just really love it.
And when we appreciate you and the other election workers who do that. I actually did it as well in 2016. As the assistant supervisor judge. And I remember that the supervisor judge, the one in charge of it, just knew so much. It was so impressive to see how talented and how much expertise that person had.
Yeah, it makes a difference. It makes a difference. Mm-hmm.
So, Fred, can you talk a little bit about the time commitment somebody can expect if they're going to maybe try this for the first time? How much time does it take? Maybe talk a little bit about the training, and people might want to know, do they get paid for this time, or is it just volunteer?
So again, we rely on a number of workers of them. Traditionally, most people have wanted and kind of targeted for that election day aspect, and that is a full day. We do require our workers to work the entire time frame. Some of this gets into the security and kind of chain of custodies and basically being able to accountable for who all is basically overseen and in charge of a polling site. So working on election day is a long day. Poll sites are open from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And we require our election workers to arrive beforehand to help set up a polling site, stay the entire day. And then once the last voter has voted either on or after 7 p.m., they got to go through a closing process. So it is a long day to work on election day. We also will have a number of advanced voting sites this year, and those will happen a few weeks before the election days, both the August and November election days. So we'll have some dates in July as well as late October, and those will have both Monday through Friday as well as Saturday voting. So some people that can't get off on a Tuesday election day, if they want to try election workers, we'll have some weekend opportunities for them to engage as a traditional election worker as well. So the election workers go through and are required to have training. Typically in the past, we've kind of done either a half day or a full day on-site training. Through the kind of the change of the pandemic and the aspects that everyone's doing, we're basically gravitating more to some online training opportunities as well. We still will have some hands-on needs, particularly for some brand new election workers. Susie can talk about the training aspect because she's really helped us in that component of them. So there will be some online training opportunities for election workers, but anyone who's brand new, we will require them to do some personal or on-site training because they get familiar with the voting equipment, some of the terminology and techniques in that aspect of them. Because the main service is to service the voters, is to basically give the voters the opportunity to do so. It is, for the most part, volunteer work, but there is a stipend that is paid to election workers. Currently, our rate is $110 a day for working as an election worker. And then we do provide an additional $25 stipend once you complete the training program. So again, some folks that want to work multiple days, and we do have a lot of folks that like working those advanced voting sites where they're able to work multiple days as we open those advanced sites prior to both the August and November election.
And Susie, I'd love to hear about the training from your point of view, both by someone that's gone through the training and assisted with the training. I'm sure there's people out there that think, how am I going to get ready? This sounds interesting and like something I'd like to do, but how do I know I can even do it? So talk us through that.
Well, Jody, I can tell you that training that you experienced in 2016 is very different than the training that we have set up now. That was a small, crowded environment. Everybody was eager to get their hands on those pull pads and to learn from them. But now we have basically a lab setting set up for new workers and even returning workers if they choose to come into the lab to get experience, to remember what they do from one election to another, because nobody has this mastered. We all are learners for every election, and it is my goal, as well as the team of people that have been gathered to help with training, to make sure that an election worker feels confident for election day, and that they can be the most valuable team member for their polling group as possible on election day. And we do that by answering questions, by guiding, by leading, experiencing the different situations that occur on an election day, so that they know they are a part of a team. The rest of the team that's working with them on election day has gone through the same training. Collective minds are able to come up with the solution or an answer to any kind of question. And all of that is to serve our voters, because our job is to help voters vote.
And they sure appreciate what you do. And I know the election office does too. Fred, let's talk about a few other election related items that people might be curious about right now. Maybe you could give us some numbers on how many polling places that you plan on having on election day, and maybe also talk about things like advanced voting. You know, are the sites going to change from the previous year? Anything new with mail-in ballots? Just what can people expect overall in 2022?
So let me start with the broad perspective and basically kind of reflect here in Kansas, and it's been this way since we're a little over 25 years, since 1996. Voters have any one of three options of how they can vote or participate in an election. They can vote in person at a polling site on election day, and that will be to their designated polling site, because we're still precinct-based on election day. So it will be one designated polling site for a voter that they need to attend. They can vote in person at an advanced voting location. And advanced voting can begin up to 20 days prior to the election cycle. And Johnson County voters have really embraced that in-person advanced voting process. And the third way is in Kansas, you can also vote by mail. And Kansas is considered kind of a no excuse by mail voting state, which means you don't have to have a particular situation or criteria to vote, but you do have to make an application to vote for each election cycle. So those three options are available for every election cycle here, both the August primary and the November elections in Kansas. So we have a good number of election day polling sites. They've gone down through the years, basically, as we've had some challenges and tried to consolidate some areas. So we'll probably have between 140 and 150 polling sites on election day coming up this election cycle here in 2022. We, in fact, right now kind of finalizing those sites with the locations. Most of our sites do not charge us. They're just letting us open the doors and be there on election day. And we really appreciate those partners to allow us to have those election day voting sites. So again, it's a little fluid, probably between 140 or 150 for election day. The other component is advanced voting. And again, as I mentioned before, that Johnson County voters have really embraced that advanced voting. Traditionally, we offer advanced voting Monday through Friday, typically from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. And then we offer Saturday advanced voting, which is typically 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. on those Saturdays. In fact, Saturdays are probably our most popular voting days for those advanced voting sites, because you get busy in your life, you get issues come up, and those you can do it on any one of the time frames. So I'm proud to announce that this year, for the 2022 election cycle, we are likely going to be offering 16 advanced voting sites for the 2022 election cycle. In the even number of years, we do them in a kind of extended a 2+ weeks time frame. We'll be opening them on Saturdays, and we're going to open them in two ways. So we're looking at first opening 9 advanced voting sites on one wave on a Saturday, and then a week later opening 7 additional voting sites to basically have 16 voting sites for almost 7-8 voting days leading up to the election. So more information is going to come out on those on the specific locations. A lot of them are ones we've used in the past. Arts and Heritage, Hilltop Center, Northeast offices, the election office, Sunset, New Century. Those are ones that we've used in the past years at a lot of voters. But we have a lot of new partners that are allowing us to use sites for these pop-up sites that are going to be 1 week long ones. And that's going to include Westwood City Hall, Shawnee City Hall, Leawood City Hall, and a few other locations throughout the county to kind of be able to provide good opportunities for voters to vote here in the 2022 election cycle.
Well, I think we'll all appreciate the more opportunities, the advanced voting, having it on Saturdays for those of us who work is a nice benefit to living in Johnson County. So I appreciate that. So Fred, as you know, there has been some conversation out there questioning if elections are fair, if they're secure, if they're accurate here in Johnson County. So for those that may have questions themselves, maybe they've heard something about our elections, what do you say to them?
So Johnson County elections are safe and secure, they're fair, they're accurate, and they're going to be accessible. So all those things apply. And for the most part, we comply to the Kansas established voting laws here in Kansas. We are a voter ID state. So there is a requirement for voters to provide their identification prior to voting, whether that's in person, either on election day or advanced voting, or if you vote by mail. Again, there's an application process where a voter has to provide their identification to apply for a mail ballot. And that's even to receive a mail ballot. Once the mail ballot's sent out to the voter, that voter, again, goes through a security process where they are able to cast their ballot, put it into an envelope specific to that voter, sign that envelope, comes back. And again, that goes through a security process. As people will learn when they become and go through election work training, it's a very secure environment. We do a lot of two-person integrity. We have a lot of checks and balances systems throughout the entire process. We do a lot of what's called balancing. It's a very key term in elections where we account for every ballot and every voter. And we make sure we know how many voters checked in to vote, and we know how many ballots have been cast at any one location, a polling site or a vote by mail. And we keep those numbers in balance to ensure that we have one voter who's cast one ballot. So again, Johnson County elections are safe and secure, they're fair, they're accessible, and they're going to be accurate.
Great, good information there. Thanks for providing that. Susie, let's say that there's someone watching this or listening this that thinks, oh, this is kind of an interesting idea to be an election worker. Maybe they're a bit curious, but they're on the fence and maybe they need a little bit of convincing. What would you say to that person?
Come on board. Come on board. You learn a lot about the Johnson County election process by being an election worker. And I tell people, I recruit quite often. I've recruited family members, neighbors, and I tell them this is the best, longest day you will ever serve your community. And it is you're excited in the morning, you're excited through the day to help voters, and then the closure at the end of the night, and it's a job well done. I tell people that, like Fred said, about the security and the fairness and all the laws that our processes are based on, that if you want to know how voting works in Johnson County, be an election worker. It's the best one-day job you could ever have.
Well, I think that's a great way to end. Hopefully there will be lots of people who hear this or watch this and sign right up. And speaking of that, the Johnson County Election Office website is a great resource. All of the information that was shared today, you can find a lot of information about the calendar, about races. You can go to the website and apply to be an election worker. You can register to vote. You can view a ballot. A lot of good resources there. That's JoCoElection.org. So great place to keep learning about this topic and get ready for August and November. But they shouldn't wait that long, right? If they're interested in being an election worker, is this the time that people should start applying?
That is correct. So go to the website. There's a tab on there to be an election worker. It'll take you to a portal where you can input your information. You'll go through a little bit of a survey kind of aspect to kind of your preferences and what you're looking for. We'll get you locked in and in the database for election worker training. So we'll have some communication with election workers between now and prior to the August election. For the most part, election training for the August election will probably start ramping up in earnest right after the 4th of July weekend. So we'll be starting in early July to get ready for that August election. But we'll have some communication dialogue with people that want to sign up and have some interest in election workers between now and that time.
Great. Well, Fred, Sherman, Susie, Martin, thank you so much for spending this time with us. I think we got some great information out there. And again, if you're interested in applying, if you're interested in learning more, check out JoCoElection.org. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You just heard JoCo on the Go. Join us next time for more Everything Johnson County. Have a topic you want to discuss? We want to hear from you. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at JoCoGov. For more on this podcast, visit jocogov.org/podcast. Thanks for listening.